Wyoming Territory, 1878. The wind swept cold off the Bighorn Mountains as Kallie Davenport stepped down from the stagecoach in the muddy street of Red Hill. Her boots sank half an inch into the slush, and she hardly noticed. Her eyes were locked on the sheriff's office across the street where her sister was being held like a common criminal. Kallie gripped the letter in her coat pocket. It was crumpled from the ride, but she knew every word by heart. "Come quick. Clara's in trouble. She's been accused of theft, and if you do not come, she may hang. Pastor Hemsley." She hurried across the road, skirts catching wind. The door to the sheriff's office creaked open, and a man with a sun-blasted face and a silver badge looked up. "You Kallie Davenport?" he asked. "Yes." "My sister, Clara, she's in the back. You can see her, but not for long." Clara looked small in the cell, curled on the cot. Her eyes lit up when she saw her. "Kallie, oh thank God, what happened?" Kallie knelt by the bars. "Tell me everything." "I did not steal anything," Clara whispered, shaking. "I was delivering medicine for Mrs. Talbot, and they said I took from the till. Sheriff found the coin in my bag, and Kallie, I did not put it there." "She's telling the truth," a low voice said behind her. Kallie turned. A man stood in the doorway, broad shoulders, dark hair under a weather-worn hat, and eyes that looked like he had seen too much for someone not yet 30. "My name's Xander Ellery," he said, "and I believe your sister's being set up." Kallie stood. "Why would you say that?" "Because I saw the real thief ride out last night. Man named Sloan. Works for a rancher east of here. The sheriff will not go after him. He is too deep in with the Talbots." Kallie's chest tightened. "Then what can I do?" Xander looked at her, steady and serious. "There is one way. The Talbots want this land for their cattle. They offered to drop the charges if someone from your family married into them. They will not touch you if you are one of theirs." "You mean, marry a stranger?" "They want it done soon, tomorrow." Kallie's hands trembled. "If I do this, Clara walks free?" "Yes," Xander said quietly. "But it will not be a real life. You will be a means to an end, a name on paper, nothing more." Clara gripped the bars. "No, Kallie, please do not." But Kallie met Xander's eyes. "Then what choice do I have?" That night, Kallie sat alone on the porch of the boarding house, hands folded tight in her lap. The sky stretched wide above her, stars cold and distant. The door opened, and Xander stepped out. "I should not have told you," he said. "No," Kallie said, voice soft. "You told me the truth. That is more than most people would have done." He leaned against the post beside her. "There is another way." Kallie looked up. "I will marry you," he said. Instead of him, she stared. "I will take your hand legally. That will tie you to someone, and the Talbots will not touch your sister. I already told them I had interest in you. They believe it." "But why?" she whispered. "You do not even know me." "I have seen what they do to women they own. I will not let that happen to you." Kallie blinked hard. "And the sheriff will go along with it. I made sure of that." "You would pay the price," she said. "I already have," he said quietly. "Years ago I let someone get hurt because I kept my head down. I am not doing that again." Kallie searched his face. He meant it. Every word. She stood. "All right," he blinked. "You mean it," she nodded. "If you are willing, so am I." The next morning, under a pale sky and the watchful gaze of the sheriff, Kallie Davenport became Xander Ellery. Clara stood beside her, tears in her eyes. "You saved me," she whispered. Kallie squeezed her hand. "You are safe now. That is all that matters." After the brief ceremony, Xander helped her into his wagon. His land was 10 miles out toward the foothills. They rode most of the way in silence. Kallie kept glancing at him, trying to understand the kind of man who would do this. "I have a small cabin," he said finally. "Nothing fancy, but it is clean, honest." "I am not a burden," she said. "I will earn my keep." He gave a short nod. "I know." The cabin sat nestled near a line of cottonwoods, smoke curling from the chimney. It was quiet, peaceful. As he helped her down, she looked at the front door and felt something settle in her chest. "You live here alone?" she asked. He hesitated. "I did not used to. My younger brother died in Dodge 3 years ago. After that, I came here." Kallie followed him inside. The place was simple wood walls, a stone hearth, a table with 2 chairs. Warm. "I will take the cot," she said. "You can take the bed," he answered. "It is yours now." Kallie shook her head. "I am not made of glass." He did not argue. Instead, he brought her a bowl of stew and sat across from her. They ate in quiet. But it was not uncomfortable. That night, Kallie lay awake on the cot near the fire, watching the shadows shift. Xander sat by the window, rifle across his knees, standing guard. She knew he did not do this for love. Not yet. But she had not expected gentleness. Or trust. And something told her deep down they were both closer to something real than either of them had ever been. Kallie folded her shawl with slow, deliberate hands and placed it over the edge of the cot. The morning light seeped through the small window above the hearth, brushing pale gold across the floorboards. Xander had already stepped out, leaving the faint scent of coffee and the soft click of the door behind him. She hadn't slept more than a few hours, the unfamiliar quiet of the cabin pressing around her like a weight. She washed up at the basin and braided her hair back, fingers working stiffly. Her body still felt like it hadn't caught up to everything that had happened, like it was waiting for the ground to shift again. The sound of boots on the porch made her straighten. Xander pushed the door open, arms full with a small sack of flour and a wrapped bundle of jerky. He set them on the table without a word and moved toward the stove, stoking the embers there until they flared. "I'll see to the fence after breakfast," he said, pouring water into a tin pot. One of the rails cracked low on the south line. "I can help," she offered, stepping forward. "You ever set fence?" "No," she paused, "but I can learn." He nodded once, then reached for 2 tin cups. "It's a walk out, not far, but you'll want your boots." She laced them up while he fixed a handful of cornmeal cakes in the pan, the smell filling the room. They ate without much talk, but it wasn't strained. He passed her the tin of salt without needing to be asked. She refilled his cup without thinking. By midday, they were out past the cottonwoods, the sun sitting high and sharp above them. The grass was dry underfoot, and the breeze smelled faintly of sage. Xander carried the replacement rail over one shoulder, a hammer and nails tucked in a leather sack at his side. Kallie walked behind, watching the way he moved quiet, measured, like the land had taught him not to waste effort. When they reached the broken section, he set the rail down and crouched to examine the split. "Snow weight did it," he muttered. "See how it bowed in the middle?" She knelt beside him, brushing her fingers over the weathered wood. "How long have you lived out here?" "Since I came back from Kansas. 2 winters now. You built this fence yourself. Every foot of it." They worked together, Xander showing her how to hold the rail steady while he hammered. Her palms stung from the effort, but she didn't falter. When the last nail was in, he stepped back and nodded. "You've got grit," he said. "I was raised on hard ground. Our father ran a freight line out of Abilene." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's so." He drank too much. "Lost 3 wagons and half the stock before Mama took us to Cheyenne. So that's where you learned to stand straight even when the wind's against you." She smiled faintly. "Something like that." They walked back slower, the work done and the weight of conversation heavier than the tools they carried. At the cabin, Xander rinsed his hands at the pump while she hung her coat by the door. "I'll ride into town tomorrow," he said. "Check on Clara. Make sure no one's trying to stir up trouble. She'll be staying with Pastor Hemsley and his wife. They'll look after her." "They're fair people," Xander agreed, "but the Talbots don't always go through doors. Sometimes they send folks through the windows." She looked at him, the edge in his voice unmistakable. "They've come after you before, not directly, but I've had my fences cut, my wagon wheel loosened. Once someone poisoned my well." Callie's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because I wouldn't sell the land." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "They've been buying up every acre east of the ridge. I'm the last one standing between them and full control of the valley. You didn't tell me that before. I didn't want you saying yes out of pity." She stepped closer. "I didn't say yes out of pity. I said it because you offered me a way out that didn't come with a collar." He studied her for a long moment before nodding once. "You can plant roots here if you want. I won't stand in your way if you'd rather leave come spring. I told you I'd earn my place. I don't walk away from that." A quiet passed between them, not empty but full of things not yet said. He turned then, lifting a saddle blanket from a trunk near the hearth and laying it across the cot. "I'll take the floor tonight," he said. "You don't have to, I do." She didn't argue. But she watched him as he moved, the way his hands hesitated when they brushed against the fabric, like touch meant more to him than words did. That night, as the fire settled low and the shadows stretched long across the walls, Callie lay awake, listening to the even rhythm of his breath. The quiet inside the cabin didn't press the same way it had before. It felt like space being held for grief, for healing, for something yet unnamed between two people who had chosen honor over fear. And she knew, without needing to say it aloud, that something had shifted. Not fast, not loud, but real. The wind had turned sharp by the time Xander rode out the next morning. Callie stood at the cabin's edge, her shawl tugged tight across her shoulders, watching until his silhouette disappeared beyond the low ridge. He hadn't said much before he left, just that he'd return before sundown, and she hadn't asked more than that. She spent the morning in the garden plot behind the cabin, clearing out brittle stalks and turning the soil with a rusted spade she found in the lean-to. Her hands worked steady, the rhythm settling something inside her. The soil was stubborn and dry, but not dead. With time it might yield. By midday she'd gathered what kindling she could and brought it inside, her fingers scraped and raw. A kettle warmed on the stove as she wiped her palms with the hem of her apron. The quiet pressed in again, but it no longer felt foreign, just waiting. It wasn't until near dusk that she heard the hoofbeats returning. She stepped outside before the wagon crested the slope. Xander reined in beside the trough, his hat low, coat dusted with road grit. He handed down a parcel wrapped in coarse paper. "From Mrs. Hemsley," he said. "Bread, pickled beans, and something she called vinegar pie. I didn't ask." "Is Clara well?" Callie asked, taking the bundle. "She was sewing when I got there. Looked steadier than she did 3 days ago." Callie nodded, brushing her thumb along the edge of the parcel. "Thank you." Xander untied the reins and led the horse toward the lean-to, his gait slower than usual. Callie followed him with her eyes, noting the tightness in his shoulders. Something happened. He didn't turn. "A man followed me out of town, tall with a scar down his cheek. I've seen him with the Talbots before, though he didn't speak." Her fingers clenched around the paper. "You think he was sent?" "I think he wanted me to know he was there." He rubbed the horse's flank, his hand lingering longer than needed. Callie stepped closer, her voice low. "Does it ever wear you down?" Holding against them. He looked sideways at her, sun setting behind him, casting half his face in shadow. "Only when I think no one notices." "I notice," she said quietly. His gaze didn't waver. "Then I'll keep standing." Inside, the fire was down to embers. Callie lit a lamp and set the parcel on the table. She unwrapped the bread and cut 2 thick slices. Xander took his seat across from her, his hands still dusty from the rains. She poured water into their tin cups. "My mother taught me to read using the Bible," she said. "She said if you can read Proverbs, you can read anything." Xander chewed, then swallowed. My brother used to read dime novels. He'd act out the shootouts with a stick and a kerchief tied around his neck. What was his name? Luke. She waited, but he didn't say more. She didn't press. Instead, she reached for the tin of beans and spooned some onto his plate. I was supposed to marry a wheelwright once, she said after a while. He had red hair and a laugh like a cartwheel. When our father lost the last of the freight wagons, the wheelwright changed his mind. Xander didn't smile, but his eyes softened. His loss, she shrugged. I used to think so. Now I just think he was small. The silence between them shifted, less like distance, more like quiet regard. After supper, Xander stood and carried their plates to the basin. Kallie dried them one at a time, her fingers brushing his when he passed the last one. She turned toward the cot, but he stopped her with a word. Kallie. She looked back. I've got no right to ask, but I'd sleep easier if you took the bed. Her brow lifted. Because of the man who followed you. Because I'd rather keep you close. She set the dish towel down. Then you should sleep there too. He didn't move. I won't take what isn't offered freely. She stepped forward, voice steady. I didn't mean like that. I meant, if we're under one roof, facing the same trouble, we stand better side by side. He nodded slowly. I can do that. That night, Xander laid a folded blanket between them, not as a wall but a line of care. They lay on their backs, both staring at the dark beams above. I don't know what peace looks like yet, Kallie said. But you want it. I want to wake up without fear chasing me. You will, he said. Not all at once, but you will. The fire hissed low. Outside, the wind had stilled, and inside the cabin, something quiet and certain began to take root. The snow came before sunrise, quiet and without warning. Kallie woke to the hush of it, a pale light filtering through the shutters, soft as breath. The blanket between her and Xander had been pushed aside sometime in the night. She could feel the heat of him near, steady, unintrusive. She didn't move. Not yet. There was a kind of peace in this stillness, and she wasn't ready to let it go. When she did sit up, she saw frost feathered across the window panes. Xander stirred behind her, his voice low and rough with sleep. Storm blew in fast. Kallie nodded, pulling her shawl over her shoulders. I didn't hear it come. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face with both hands. It'll pass by evening if the sky clears, but the road to town'll be near impassable till tomorrow. She crossed to the stove, adding wood to the fire. It caught after a few tries, flames licking up from the coals. With the cabin warming, she pulled the kettle from the hook and set it to boil. I'll need to check the roof for sag, Xander said, pushing his arms into his coat. It's flat on the north end, snow piles heavy there. He stepped outside with a shovel slung over his shoulder. Kallie watched from the window as he climbed the ladder with practiced ease. His coat flared in the wind, but his stance never wavered. She turned to the cupboard, gathering what she could find: cornmeal, a few eggs, lard in a crock, and began mixing batter. By the time he came back in, damp and flushed from the cold, the skillet was hot and the first cakes were browning. He hung his coat near the door and stepped to the basin, water dripping from his cuffs. You didn't have to cook, he said. I know, she replied, flipping one of the cakes. But I wanted to. They ate in companionable quiet, the snow muting even their footsteps across the floorboards. Afterward, she cleared the dishes while he checked the seams near the hearth. A small draft pushed through, and he packed it with dry moss from a basket by the hearthstones. You always leave this prepared, she asked. Only way to last through winter. Nothing comes easy out here. Kallie leaned against the table, drying her hands on her apron. I've never spent a winter this far from town. There's a rhythm to it. Chores don't slow just 'cause the weather turns. She hesitated, watching the firelight catch in the lines near his eyes. You ever get lonely? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for a small tin box on the mantel and opened it, pulling out a folded paper. "This was Luke's," he said, handing it to her. "He wrote it when he turned 17. Said he wanted to see the Pacific Ocean. Didn't make it, but he got close." She unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was uneven but eager. It listed towns he planned to visit, rivers he hoped to cross, a sketch of a horse in the corner. "He was younger than you, by 3 years. She handed it back. "You kept this all this time," Xander nodded, tucking it into the tin. "Reminds me what matters." "What's worth protecting?" Kallie looked toward the window, where the snow still fell in slow, deliberate spirals. "You think there's still good in people like us, ones who have lost too much." His voice was quiet. "I think the ones who have lost most carry the good deeper. It's just harder to see right away." She stepped closer, resting her hand on the edge of the table. "I didn't expect to find steadiness here, not with a man I barely knew, but I haven't felt unafraid in a long time." Xander met her gaze. "You're not alone in this anymore." "That's not nothing." A log cracked in the hearth, throwing sparks into the air. Kallie crossed to the window, watching the flakes drift down, soft as ash. "Come spring," she said, "I want to plant something. Beans, maybe, or squash." "You'll have good luck with the southern slope," he said. "Soil's better there, warmer." She turned to him, brow raised. "You'll let me?" His eyes didn't leave hers. "It's your home now, too." She didn't speak again, not with words, but she stepped forward, slow and certain, and took his hand where it rested on the back of the chair. His fingers curled around hers without hesitation, warm and grounding. Outside, the snow thickened. Inside, the silence between them shifted again, not distance, not waiting, just the quiet of something beginning. The snow held through the night and into the next day, laying a clean hush over the land. Kallie stepped outside with a bucket in hand, boots crunching softly across the packed white. The sky had turned hard blue, and sunlight sparked across the ice-laced cottonwoods. She filled the bucket at the pump, breath curling white in the air, then turned back toward the cabin where Xander was mending a drawer that had come loose from the built-in cupboard. He looked up when she came in, a line of sawdust across his sleeve. "Water's near frozen," she said, setting the bucket beside the stove. "Ground's too hard for the well to give more than that," he replied, tapping the nail gently into the side of the drawer. "We'll store it near the fire, keep it from icing." She crouched beside the stove, shifting the kettle to the hotter edge. The scent of ash and pine bark clung to her, and the warmth soaked into her bones. After a minute, she asked, "You ever think about what you'd be doing if things had gone different?" He paused, considering. "I used to want to build wagons, had a knack for the framework, figured I'd save enough to open a shop in Fort Kearney." "What stopped you?" "Luke got sick." "I couldn't leave him." She nodded, eyes on the flames. "I wanted to be a school teacher. Took to reading early, and I thought maybe I could show someone else how to find the world inside a page." "What changed your mind?" She smiled faintly. "Life." He set the drawer aside and stood, brushing his hands on his trousers. "You still could. There's no school here. There's children on the ranches. Some don't get past their letters." Kallie looked up. "You think they'd let me? They'd be lucky to have you." That afternoon, Xander tacked a scrap of oilcloth over the window frame to block a draft. Kallie stitched a tear in the sleeve of his coat, her needle threading through the thick canvas with steady, practiced hands. They didn't speak much, but the quiet between them had softened into something companionable. Later, as dusk settled and the fire crackled low, he brought in a stack of firewood and stood with it balanced in his arms. "I was thinking," he said, setting it down, "we ought to file the papers come spring, make it legal before the circuit judge rides through again." Kallie looked over from the table where she was darning a wool sock. "I thought it already was. By the preacher, yes, but not on the county rolls." Not yet. She laid the sock down. Do you want that? I want you to have a name that means something, not just a shield from trouble. She crossed to him, her hand brushing lightly along his forearm. I already do. But if it matters to you, it matters to me. He rested his palm against the side of her face, his calloused thumb catching just under her jaw. I didn't know if you'd come to care for me, he said. Not like this. I didn't know either, she said, voice low. But I do. He kissed her then, slow and sure, as if he'd been waiting for her to say it aloud. She leaned into him, the firelight catching in her hair, and for the first time in years she felt wholly claimed, not owned, not bartered, but chosen. That night they lay beneath the quilt she'd mended the day before, the blanket between them folded and stored away. The wind rattled the shutters, but they didn't notice. Her hand found his in the dark, and he held it like he meant to never let go again. By early March, the snow had melted off the low slopes, and the earth began to breathe again. Clara came out to visit, riding behind Mrs. Hemsley's buggy with a smile that reached her eyes. She brought a small bundle wrapped in linen books, mostly, and a folded letter of recommendation from the pastor. "You're starting a school?" she asked, watching Kallie unpack the books onto a shelf Xander had built near the window. "Just a few children to start," Kallie said. "The Harrington boys, the Salinas girl, but it's something." Clara looked around the cabin with quiet approval. "You're happy here." "I am." Later that week, Xander took Clara's letter into town and returned with a neatly folded document bearing the county seal. He handed it to Kallie near the stove, firelight flickering over the words, "Marriage recognized and lawful under the name Ellery." "You deserve every right and every protection," he said. "You're not just surviving anymore." She folded the paper and tucked it into the Bible her mother once used to teach her. "No, I'm living." The months passed with the slow, rich rhythm of a new life taking hold. The garden she planted along the southern slope sprouted green with beans and squash by midsummer. Children came twice a week, their lessons held beneath the cottonwoods on fair days and inside the cabin when it rained. Xander built a bench for them, and when the sun dipped low, he'd sit beside her, listening to the children recite. One evening, after the students had gone and the sky burned pink over the valley, he turned to her beneath the cottonwoods. "I never thought peace would look like this." She reached for his hand. "It does, and it's ours." They walked back to the cabin side by side, boots brushing grass gone soft in the twilight, the fence lines holding firm around the land they now shared. The Talbots had long since turned their eyes elsewhere, and no one had come in months to test the edges of that quiet. Inside, the fire waited, the table laid for two, and a kettle warming with the promise of one more evening spent side by side. Kallie reached for the lamp, but Xander caught her wrist gently. "Leave it a while," he said. "The light's still good." So they stood in the half-glow, arms wrapped around each other, watching the sun fall behind the ridge, safe, steady, and home. Years later, folks who passed through the valley remembered the teacher with a voice like calm water, and the man who built fences that never failed. They lived long and quiet, through hard winters and soft summers, with love that grew the way all good things do, with patience, with care, and with the kind of strength that never needed to be spoken aloud.